Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Zach Ackerman. I am Denison's Director of Business Development, leading our sales and marketing functions. Joining me today is Jay Richards, one of our senior consultants, and he's going to walk us through the 5 critical skills that make a supervisor effective in the manufacturing industry. It'll be a summary of a study performed on over 400 leaders across North America within manufacturing companies, and will soon to be published in industry journals. As we move through today's presentation, please feel free to use the chat function to ask questions. We will either take them throughout the course of our conversation today or at the end, leaving plenty of room for back and forth between you, myself, and Jay. So as we head into our morning or afternoon and our evenings, just before our holiday breaks, let's get into it. Our host today, as I mentioned, is Jay Richards. Jay has a few identities here at Denison, wearing a few different hats. He's joined us to host other webinars around manufacturing and safety, but at Denison, we know Jay as one of our founders. He's a founding associate of Denison Consulting, part of the original 3 people founding the firm. He's now one of our senior consultants and a practice lead for our manufacturing leadership work. He has really spearheaded innovations on how do we take the tools we have to better suit them to the unique needs of blue-collar workforces. And he's been really wonderful, both leading research as well as practical consulting in that space. With over 25 years of experience in culture consulting and leadership coaching for organizations like the Defense Logistics Agency, ExxonMobil, and Interface, he is one of our most precious assets here, and that experience he takes and spreads to the people through publications in Industry Week. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jay to walk you through some of his latest research, which will be published shortly.
Thanks, Zach, and thanks for that precious remark. Hey, anyway, it's good to be here. I always love doing these. Zach's just a great moderator. What we're going to look at today is basically some things I've done. We sit on a pile of data here at Denison, and I'm a data guy by trade. I've been doing that for the last 30-some-odd years. I love data, but I also love manufacturing. I grew up here in Michigan, specifically right around Lansing with the old Oldsmobile, which is now General Motors. I love walking in and out of plants and just seeing how things work. One of the things that I've noticed, lately, as the economy's really heated up, and the unemployment rate goes down, you see these struggles within the manufacturing. I've got a lot of plant managers that'll come up and say, man, what do we do about the millennials? But more importantly, what do we do about keeping people here? And not only keeping people here, but recruiting people in. Some people are saying, we're lucky, if we get our 4th or 5th pick when we're recruiting out there. And so that kind of led me to start looking at and parsing out a lot of this data that we've got. And so what you're going to see here is I used some text analytics that we have available to us and started looking at culture data and leadership data, and specifically on the comments of what people said. So what you're looking at here is basically what we're up against now, just trying to recruit people, is the millennials, the new, younger people. They don't just join an organization by chance. They've got social apps, right? They got Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, right? Which also means that they can not only see your dirty laundry, they can kind of smell it too, before they even walk in and interview. So what happens is people will pull up their Glassdoor and look at rankings. They can see all sorts of information, but more importantly, verbatim text of how people rate you, but what they say about you. And here, leaders are old school, terrible, refuse to be flexible. You see things like dirty, forced OT, bipolar managers. I mean, that's not the way you want to, advertise your organization, okay? So what we did here is basically this looks at why people might join, but also why people might leave. There's another thing that I also did just recently is I took a lot of our manufacturing data. What you're looking at here is actually from 150 manufacturing plants, okay? And what we did was looked at turnover intentions, the likelihood that somebody might look for another job. And basically here, what you see is the far left is the top quartile facilities, okay? That means they're scoring in the fourth quartile. They're better than probably 75% of the organizations out there. If you look at the turnover intention, roughly 15% are actively looking for jobs, okay? Now, this isn't actual turnover. This is turnover intention. So this is from a question on the survey that actually asked how likely are you to look for a job, right? But it also, from the research, actually maps quite close to actual turnover. So it's a good measure. If you look all the way over to the bottom quartile, these are the ones where probably about 75% of the companies are scoring higher than them, these companies in the database. There, we've got actually a 32% turnover intention. And what's more interesting is if you actually take the ones that are single digit, which is what we would call a donut of doom. A lot of you probably are familiar with our terminology, but the single digits where you see 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 across the board, those get upwards of 40 to 50% turnover. So what we have here is cultural aspects and leadership aspects that can impact whether people will actually join the organization and also can explain why people leave. And that's my point and the purpose of actually looking at this.
This is super helpful, Jay. So what I'm hearing is that the more aligned, the more clear the culture, the stronger the culture, the less likely people are to be looking for a new job. And we have some data and statistics to back that up. It's not just gut intuition.
Oh, for sure.
But as we look at a metric like turnover intention, your employees have 1 foot out the door. And that's dangerous, and that presents a risk because you don't want to lose that person and the skill set and the cost that it takes to hire someone, not to mention the missed productivity while they're out. But what have you seen in terms of someone who is looking for a new job, while they're still in the organization, are they giving it their all? Are they, someone who intends to turn over, this 15%, this 32% of staff who intends to turn over, what's their productivity like while they're still at the organization?
Oh, probably. I mean, it goes back to the whole engagement piece over the last couple of decades, shows that people that are actively disengaged are not as productive as, a regular employee. But what this also points out is those people that leave, when you have that many new people coming in, when you're up in that bottom quartile and you got 32% turnover, or even worse yet, 50, right? That means new people are coming in all of the time. What does that do for quality, right? Productivity. The morale, you might as well forget about that. You got safety, you got all of these issues. When you start having that many new people come in, it affects everything, everything. So when you look at turnover costs and things like that in the environment, a lot of people think, well, what's the cost of turnover? The direct costs are, putting something in, getting somebody in the door, but it's more than that. Indirect costs means it impacts safety, quality, and everything else. And so, there's all sorts of research. You can hear things like, the cost of turnover is equal to the annual salary of the person leaving. Sometimes it's 50%, but who cares? Whether it's full or 50%. If somebody leaves and you got an hourly person at, let's say, $30,000 a year, that's $15,000 per person. You lose 10 people, just 10 people, that's $150,000. That's a huge cost for any one single plant specifically. If you got some plant that's like 200 or so people, that's a lot of money. But it's also, what you find on these organizations that are on the far left, the top quartile, those are people that realize they're actually using their employees as a competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. When you look at the ones on the bottom quartile, it's a lot about process and things like that, technology maybe. But hey, the ones on the left, the top quartile, are doing that too. Yeah. Right?
And that attitude towards your employees, I think, is exactly the heart of what we're going to get at today.
Exactly.
So let's drive forward. Yeah. And if people are interested in links between culture and safety, Jay facilitated a fantastic webinar on that subject that you can find at denisonconsulting.com/webinar.
Yeah, one more thing before we go on.
Okay.
Speaking of Glassdoor, they published a lot of great stuff, and I use that in some of my presentations. I use that just to get people's attention, right? It's like this stuff, it used to be kind of the soft, fuzzy stuff, but not so much now. It's a lot, people actually do take this stuff seriously. But Glassdoor has published and shown that organizations in their top 100 outperform like the Russell 3000, the S&P, the Fortune 500, the Fortune 100 great places to work. They've done that too. So it's not like it's rocket science. This stuff actually makes sense. The other thing with Glassdoor, which is kind of cool, is they actually have done some research on why people jump and what they're looking for, and culture is one of the top 5 things that they look for.
And here we see that exact same pattern
for sure.
holding true in our data as well.
So what I wanted to do, my thought process as I look and start working with my clients and what do we need? What makes a great leader, okay? What makes a great leader? We can use a lot of the 360 data and things like that, but to me it was more like, hey, just ask the employees, okay? So what I did is I was able to pull 25 of our manufacturing companies, okay, and over 400 supervisors who took the 360 and also were asked the question, what makes this person effective? And then I just looked at those that were high-performing leaders, okay, and I want to see how people describe these individuals, okay, and by doing so, we can come up with a profile. So this next slide, basically, if you've all worked with us before, you've seen the 360, that's a self and other, plus the open-ended question. So basically, we took all of those questions, and there was one question with over 3,000 comments of people specifically asked, what makes this leader effective? Then we used, basically, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, so just in case folks want some clarity, what our 360 does is it takes the leader's self-assessment and then an assessment of their supervisor, their peers, and their direct reports, and is measuring them on 96 concrete behaviors that research prove are connected to performance and culture. That's to say, we're measuring concrete behaviors that data over the last 20 years indicate leaders need to have in order to drive performance within their area of responsibility. And that's exactly the data we're using here.
Exactly.
So moving back to Jay's point, it also includes open-ended question, and Jay will get into their methodology for examining that.
Yeah, so basically we just took those comments. That's what our sole focus was. We used the 360 survey only to determine which ones were high-performing leaders of the 25 companies and the 400. And that gave us the list of 400, okay? And then we use what we call natural language processing, or NLP techniques. And basically what that is text analytics, okay? So what it does is you got a lot of qualitative data. If you're just looking at it, thousands of cases of data, it's just a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts, a lot of whatever, a lot of language, verbiage. But what the text analytics tool will do is it will start quantifying little words and things that people are saying, concepts, and it basically takes it into themes of what these people are saying about what they see as good leaders. And eventually what it does is it bubbles up, almost like a profile of what they're talking about. It's almost like, what do they take? Sometimes they'll take skulls from old fossils from 1 million years ago and put a face to it. That's kind of what this is doing. The NLP basically takes it and puts a model together that organizations can then use for what they're looking for. Because what I found, when you get into manufacturing, it's a little bit different. You know, you get into places like ExxonMobil in the finance division at the higher levels. They got the money. You know, General Motors, they got the money. They all have the money to train these executives. And you got these great executive education programs at the University of Michigan, Harvard, and things like that. And they spend thousands upon thousands. But what I'm finding is, at the supervisory level, it's like, you know, okay, if the person's done a great job, they're reliable, they got a lot of experience and knowledge, hey, you know, they're a great individual contributor, let's make them a leader, okay? But they don't become a leader. What happens is they become a boss, okay? And that's okay, that's cool. And some work, some don't. And what happens is they develop mentors and things like that. So what we're trying to do is offer 5 things that people can look at to help maybe judge, hey, can this person actually be a leader? So what we're doing is we're taking the data and we're going to quantify that qualitative, okay? And the next is an example. This is what we're up against, okay? So this is an example of what the NLP will do. These are just a sample of comments, okay? And what it's going to do is it's going to go in and look things, provides clear direction, opportunities to learn, available for guidance, level-headed, very fair, approachable, delegate, listen. Listen is probably, I could probably, those 3,000 comments, I think if I remember right, just for fun, because I see the word listen when people describe great leaders. It's to the point where I can almost, if I see that in the comments, I can almost predict that the 360 results will be a full profile. But when I just highlighted the words of all those 3,000 comments, almost 10% of them actually mention the word listen. So anyways, the NLP goes through all of this data, and then what happens is it takes it and then it bubbles up. And the 5 qualities that we find then becomes the ones you're about to see right now. 1, shares information within and across groups. And so this basically, this is not that I will tell you on a need-to-know basis kind of boss, right? Great supervisors share information to help their people get the job done. They do not hoard information for the sake of power, they share it. This person shares the goals and objectives of the organization and regularly communicates it through both formal and informal means such as staff meetings, walk-arounds, huddles, things like that. When this type of person sees shift-to-shift issues, they confront it head-on by bringing people together to solve problems, not create them. So that's shares information, which is, it makes total sense. It's communication, right? So that's the type of thing we want to do with supervisors or encourage supervisors. We're looking for people who are good at sharing information, not the power people that hoard it. The next one, once again, as I said earlier, listens, but it's also approachable and open to different ways of doing things. So employees will describe this person as a people person. They're approachable in a way that employees feel comfortable to raise issues with. Not only do they listen, they actively solicit feedback and input from others, thus making employees feel valued and respected. These supervisors demonstrate that they are often open to diverse viewpoints and new ways of doing things. It's not a my way or the highway kind of person. They actually take information in and process it. Thus, which is one of the big reasons why employees will often feel listened to with this type of a leader, okay? And then the next one. This is even more, this is not more important, but it's very important, okay? I hear this a lot on the floor. People, you can go out and listen, but you have to also follow up with the actions, okay? This type of person is authentic when making commitments and ensures that actions are taken as a follow-up to feedback and input provided by others. They respect this person because they not only listen, but they follow up. They get things done, and employees walk away feeling like this person has their back. If resources are needed, this is the type of person that makes it happen. They remove obstacles, they don't create them, okay? So the whole piece with the listen has to be accompanied with that follow-up piece. Otherwise, it just seems insincere. And then you got stays calm under pressure. This is probably one of the big ones. And this is actually what started me down this road, looking at supervisors and how supervisors are developed. Because what you do, and any of you out there that coach in this manufacturing field see this a lot, right? It's a theory X, very authoritarian, very belittling type of environment if it's not, if we don't manage it. Okay, and what happens is that because there's a lack of development at the supervisory level, what happens is the supervisor relies on informal ways of developing themselves, so they look for mentors. And a lot of times these mentors didn't have any training either, so they end up kind of like you got two people inexperienced trying to figure out things on their own. And what happens is they often go into this what I call a boss mentality. And then to me, it's fine. You know what? We don't care if you're the boss. That's your title. Everybody knows you're the boss. But the key is to become their leader. You got to earn that, right? And so this is what staying calm under pressure. This is what people look for. They don't look for a person that loses it. They're calm, rational, always in control. They're not condescending, but relate to people in a professional manner. They're proactive, not reactive. No one will look at this person as a firefighter, just the one you rely on to get the job done, okay? This person does not shy away from conflict. In fact, they deal with it effectively to make tough decisions. But they do that by weighing different opinions and viewpoints. So calm under pressure, not losing it. Number 5 then finally is mentors and supports others, okay? You know, one of the main reasons when they come in to a supervisor level, it's because they have been a great type of a boss. The company basically wants them to model their behavior, okay? And so they hope that this person will create more people just like them. But the problem is, you can be a great individual contributor and a horrible boss. And so what happens is, you know, it just kind of replicates itself. So what this person does, what we look for, and what employees look for is the type of person that develops their people, develops their bench strengths, you know, regularly getting out there, staying connected with people, asking them what they need, what can they do. They don't just throw people into the fire. They get out there, they train, or they make sure that they get trained, and also then listen, follow up, and things like that. But this basically, in a nutshell, is what we came up with, and those are the 5.
And I think this is incredible. We live in an age of lists. BuzzFeed is constantly putting out, you know, the top 10 things that you absolutely have to do during the fall season to be trendy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a world of lists, but where do these lists come from? And what I love about this is the methodology. At first, we don't just go with our gut and intuition. We have gut and intuition because we've worked in manufacturing for 25 years. But instead of just jotting down what's on the top of our minds, we actually go to the employees who experience it every day. And we start with a thesis, and then we go to these employees to validate that thesis. And we do it by first isolating the highest performing leaders by looking at quantitative data. And once we've isolated those high performing leaders, we look to their employees en masse and say, what makes a good leader? What makes these people quantitatively so powerful as a resource to their company and to their unit? And that's what we get. And then we use essentially machine learning techniques that are valid and well publicized throughout the industry, and we come up with our list. So it's not just Jay riddling off what he thinks. It's Jay having a theory and then digging deep into the data using the latest technology in machine learning to get you 5 things that are concrete and coachable, and I love it.
Exactly. And what's interesting is just as I was putting the deck together, I thought, hey, you know, let's take a look at, well, I'll give you a sample because I didn't do anything similar with the poor performing, but I did pull the poor performing in all of their comments, and I just threw a couple in there at the very end here. But this is, you know, this is asking a different question, which is, what could this person do to be more effective?
Right.
And these are the leaders that are deemed not really good in the manufacturing industry.
So if you have any supervisor in the manufacturing space, there's one risk above all else, and that is the boss mentality.
Yeah. I didn't think probably one of my favorites was one of the last comments in the whole group of hundreds and hundreds, which was just grow up. You know what I mean? I mean, it kind of signifies, you know, when you're out there, if you're in on a floor, you know, and you know it. They actually, what it is, you know, I typically coach transactional analysis, you know, which is the parent, adult, child type of mentality. And what you find is, you know, as soon as you start listening to people on the floor and they're saying they treat us like kids here, you know they're communicating out of a parent type of style and stuff. And so, you know, it's a lot of emotion, which is child, but mostly that authoritarian, you know. And to me, you know, the manufacturing that's left here, manufacturing is a lot different than it used to be, you know. It's not like it's unskilled labor where you've got a, you know, an assembly line where you can literally pull somebody off and have them twist a bolt, you know, and if they don't do well, you pull somebody else in, you know. It's mostly skilled, and these people are great people. So you don't want, you know, some, you know, 40-year-old person being talked to like a child, you know. They want to have their thoughts and ideas listened to, and you know, and if you can do that, I mean, my foundation of everything that I do when I first start coaching people is just talk to them about, the first thing we're going to do is behavior.
Yeah.
And we're going to start treating people, with respect. We treat people how we would want to be treated, period. And that's exactly where we go for the next month. You can't lose it. You can't be authoritarian. It doesn't mean you got to be walked over, right? Because a lot of times they'll say, well, I can't act that way. They'll walk all over me. It's like, I'm not talking about, hugging people and letting people get away with stuff. I'm just talking about how you communicate with people. And communicating with respect will get respect. Because I got this one example of a group, when they didn't respect a leader, at 3 o'clock everybody would be punching out, and they were telling me, this leader they had was horrible. But in the old days when they had, this person, they would sit there and find out there was a truck coming in, right? A truck would be coming in. But it was coming in late, like 10 after 3. So they would tell their boss, hey, this truck's coming in, you want us to help you unload it? Like, yeah, no, he loved that, Respect equals respect. Says this new boss, we find out the truck's coming in late, man, we're all lined up at the time machine punching out. And we get the heck out of there, and then we all laugh because we know he's going to be sitting there emptying that truck himself. No respect. There's no mutual respect. So anyway, you got to earn that leadership role, but the boss is your title.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. And I'll remind folks as we move to the question period of this to use the chat function if they have any questions or other discussion points they want to bring up. Jay is a wealth of knowledge and has coached hundreds of leaders and supervisors, and so you can just pull on examples for anything you may want to talk through. I think an important angle here is, we've identified these 5 behaviors that we want to see. So my question to you, Jay, is how do you coach around this? Can you bring to life a little bit of your coaching methodology, and how do we actually meaningfully change supervisors' habits and behaviors to live these 5 behaviors?
Yeah, well, one, typically at that level, they're not giving up the biggest part of the budget, right? But I do what I don't like are one-day feel-good events, right? You see this a lot in the shops. What they'll do is they'll bring all their supervisors in, they'll have somebody come in and start teaching like a little seminar. To me, it's got to be more than that. If you really want to change it, you got to get at the heart of behavior. Because what happens is these people, specifically, they're really the boss mentality. All they know is, hey, I just got to show up, listen, probably they take attendance, so they'll write their name in and they did what they said they did. But they didn't change their behavior. What I do is I go in over a 3-month period, okay? I do sessions on, I actually do the transactional analysis. That's the first thing I start. And I tell people, this first session, I might have all the leaders in a room, and I do a learning session, right? An hour, that's all. You just give me an hour, and I'm going to teach them how to treat people with, respect, right? How you want to be respected. And then we go into one-on-one coaching sessions. A lot of times I'll have a 360 results. The 360 results are a great way of getting people's attention. There's nothing worse than having to stare at a donut of doom. It wakes people up, and it really holds the mirror up to them, okay? And so then what I do is with the one-on-one sessions, I talk to them, okay, we got to change behavior. But I also try to get them, one of the first things I ask people is when I'm going to coach them, I don't do this in the learning session, I do this one-on-one across the room. So it's just me and them, and I'll say, how do you feel when you go home at night? And it's interesting, because if I ask them, how do you feel at work, they're going to be guarded, they got that wall up, I feel great, But if you ask them how they feel at night when they go home, it's kind of a very emotional question for them, because then they start thinking about all the anger that they take home with them. And I start talking to them about, you can change that. You can actually make yourself feel better by treating people differently without reacting with anger and things of that nature. So I get that commitment from them, and then a month later, I'm back in the shop, right? And we're meeting again. And then this time it might be, I'm doing a learning session on recognizing employees. But by that time, I've also got them to commit. 4 weeks, baby. 4 weeks. We don't lose it. We don't go into adult. We don't go into child. We stay in adult, our rational stealth, and that's how we communicate with people. The one in the article that's being published, this Mike guy, he was in a manufacturing company, he after his first month, I asked him, how are you feeling, Mike? And he's like, well, I'm feeling great, but everybody at the shop thinks something's wrong with me. They think I must have gone to the doctor and got some bad news, and now I'm trying to atone for my past sins, and it's like, yeah, well, that's cool, because it's changing, and it's working, and it takes 6 weeks to develop a habit. So we're in 4 weeks in. So the next session, boom, we get into things around recognizing employees. I had one guy, it was really cool. He started telling me, some of the things he had been doing, and he put all of his guys' birthdays into his phone. And so a day before, he'd get a reminder that so-and-so has a birthday. And then he'd go in and he'd take the whole crew out for lunch. And he thought that was cool. But the coolest part was when his birthday rolled around, his employees had put his birthday in their phone, and they took him out to lunch. And that's when you really started noticing, because that was the second month that things were starting to turn around. And then finally, the third month, we still go in. We might do things like effective communication and the value of sharing information, and that's the third month, and that's the third and final. But what I'll also do is I'll give them 3 questions to the employees. Say, did you see a change? Was this change for the good? Is this person making honest efforts? And I want to do that, and I let them know up front I'm going to ask those 3 questions because I want some accountability. I don't want it as a feel-good event. I want them to know that at the end of that 3 months, I'm going to ask, and you're going to sit with me, and we're going to have a conversation about those results, because they're either going to go up, or they're going to be bad, or whatever. But then you've got, so that to me is one of the key pieces, and that seems to be what a lot of my clients, when I tell them about that, they really like that, because they don't want it. They had to feel good. The one guy I coached, when they said, we sent him to an anger management thing. I know, well, how'd that work out for you? Well, yeah, it worked maybe a week,
And he's still angry,
Exactly.
So what happens as you go through this coaching process, and the answer to the last question is, did they put in an honest effort? And the answer is no. Right. How do you escalate from there?
Well, then it goes right back to the person that hired me. So it's usually going to be, typically, it's not a plant manager I'm usually brought in. It's usually like the CEO, CHRO, somebody high level, okay? And so, they know that this information is going to be shared back with the people well above them, okay? The one guy, Mike, that I just mentioned, he'd been with the company 27 years. He wanted their plant manager spot, which was supposed to be up in 4 to 5 years, and he figured it was his, right? Nobody in the office wanted him, and some of the supervisors on the floor said they'd quit if he got it. So before they brought me in, they did tell him, this is it.
So this can be a
We're
critical...
willing to cut. We can't, what they said is, we're trying to focus on building our culture, so how can we condone your behavior?
Right.
You either got to change, and we'll give you this option.
And that's the beautiful thing about coaching, is it has so many applications. Great probably for his lines, productivity, their efficiency, their safety, their quality, but also critical piece of their succession planning. Because now all of a sudden they have this resource in Mike to become plant manager in 4 to 5 years and be a completely different kind of performer.
Completely different person.
Yeah.
Amazing. And he's not only, the people are happy with it, but he's happy with himself. I mean, he's amazingly, it's so fun to watch guys come in and they're like, you see them like really guarded with their arms crossed and really skeptical.
Yeah.
And then 3 months, you see someone that's been like hardcore boss mentality suddenly like looks forward to it.
Yeah.
And keep in mind when you're doing seminars or things like that, it's easy to just blend. Mm-hmm. But when you're one-on-one, a lot of times they'll often say, Jay, there should be a couch in here.
Yeah.
And it's true,
Yeah.
It's psychology. You're basically using basic psychology to get in there and talk with people and get them to go to root cause and get deep into what drives them and teach them, more importantly, there's some completely different ways to lead. And I haven't had a failure yet, because I think the key is they don't know any better. They don't know what they don't know. Yeah. And so they're actually quite thirsty to learn
Right.
new ways of doing things. And when they see their behavior change within a month and see how it makes them feel inside, this like, I always tell, some of the things I tell them, I'm like, you get up in the morning, there's two paths you can take. You can either put negative energy out there, and it'll be greeted with negative energy, or you can put positive energy out there, and it will be greeted with positive energy.
Yeah.
And they totally buy into that,
Yeah.
you know?
No,
And I don't blame them. You know,
no.
I practice that myself.
Not to mention, all the performance metrics that they're measured on are gonna improve as well.
Oh, for
which
sure.
means money in their pocket.
Oh, for sure. You
Right.
can watch the turnover rates go down. You know, it's not rocket science,
Right.
man.
Okay, my last question for you, Jay. So it's not the supervisors who are gonna come to you and say, I want coaching and I have a budget for it, right? They're gonna be decision makers.
Right.
So what is, 2 or 3 critically important talking points in 30 seconds of how you would articulate the importance of this research and coaching a frontline supervisor in manufacturing to the kind of person who would have the decision to pay for
Oh,
it?
good Lord, what was that, the second or third slide?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? All I know is, right now, is that people aren't gonna take the crap anymore. It's the days of, if you don't like it here, go down the street, those are over, man. Once the employment rate hit 3.5%, man, people are going elsewhere. You can't use that logic anymore. So what I talk to people is, and I just did this, I was at Jacksonville last week, right? I just sat and talked with 30 supervisors, and their decision maker was there, right? And boom, this week they got an order for it. And it was simple. You tell them, I think the turnover rate's always been there, okay? And it goes up when you got bad leaders. But I think what's interesting is Indeed and Glassdoor. That it's like, and any of you got clients, go to your clients, just go to Glassdoor, type it in. If you know that they're not a great man, if that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
I've seen things like, don't walk away from this company, run. I mean, some of the most horrible things, and that's what's advertising your company. And the people, I'm somewhere between a boomer and an exit, right? But I'm still technically savvy. I use all those apps. But my kids, the younger, that's all they use.
Yeah.
They don't go to a restaurant without checking it out on an app. And so they don't go into a company. So when you get someone that's crying over funding, can't find employees, hey, check out your app. I did that with one of my clients down in Ohio. I'm like, have you seen your Glassdoor? Oh, yeah. And of course, she had all sorts of excuses for it. But I said, you got a huge turnover problem.
Right.
She got, what she told me, she got 10 people in the door the month of October and lost 12.
yeah. So
Okay.
culture and leadership have always had an impact on turnover. The critical difference is this economy, you can't replace them.
You can't.
So now you're out of line.
Yeah, and once it hits that, once you go over that threshold, once you hit that, like that poor culture at 30%, right? And right now, I've checked the Bureau for Labor Statistics, right now, it used to be about 12% back in the old days, right? When the economy was just average. Now, manufacturing, healthcare, and something else, I can't remember, are 20%, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, retail's always whacked out.
Yeah.
But manufacturing at 20%, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And meanwhile, industrial and organizational psychology is perhaps the fastest growing industry according to that same study. So you all are in the right profession. Congratulations.
Oh, heck yeah.
All right.
Well, it's really cool. I mean, I use this also when I'm talking to people. When we first started out here at Denison, so it was like 98, 99, you'd go into places and everybody coined the phrase soft stuff, fuzzy stuff, you can't get your head around it, and crap like that. We were actually at Ford Motor Company one time, and I can't remember if it was Dan or Bill, and, one of the execs said, every time somebody mentions the word culture, I reach for my revolver. It's like, that's how serious we were taken back in those days. But there's some things that happen, okay? The Challenger, 10 years later, boom, what do they say? What was the result? Culture of fear, okay? Firestone, Harvey Firestone and Henry Ford had this great relationship for years that was destroyed by a plant in Illinois, okay? That's where they came down to a culture with management employee union type of riffs. And then finally, Enron, man.
Yeah.
Enron.
Yeah,
And it's like suddenly it goes from the HR director to where you got CHROs. And I read an article actually that shows that more and more the CHROs are in line for the CEO spot instead of what used to be like the old CFO type of thing,
Right.
which tells you that people are starting to see we need to make our employees our true competitive advantage and not just say they're our most important asset.
Yeah, there are two executives who generally know the blueprint of the organization better than anyone. The CFO because they understand it all in dollars and cents, and the CHRO because they know it in faces and people.
Exactly.
And that's absolutely true. And I think the Enron example is just so beautiful because Enron has these incredible core values, right? You read them on a poster outside of the bathroom, and you're like, this is a really great, beneficial company to the world. Like, they're doing good things.
Sign me up.
Right.
Yeah.
But they didn't ingrain them in the behaviors of their leaders.
Exactly.
And it all fell apart.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So all of those little things have had a huge impact on our credibility, and I'm sure everybody that's on this webinar today probably experienced the same thing. You're not having to do battle convincing people anymore. They just inherently know it.
But having the data helps too. So
for sure.
I'm going to cut us off there. Jay, really appreciate your time, your research, and your energy. To everyone on the line, we really appreciate you joining us. We wish everyone a very happy holiday season. What we'll do after this is, to everyone who is able to join us, we'll send around this slide deck, and then when the video is ready for publication, we'll circulate it around again, and when the article is published, we'll make sure that you have it in your hands. So, Jay, thank you. Everyone online, thank you, and have a very happy holiday season with hopefully a little bit of PTO.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.